This is Hashtag History, episode 148. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Leah.
And this week, we are talking about the deadliest shipwreck in American history. Have you ever heard of it?
No.
I don't feel like most people have, and yet it is the greatest maritime disaster in American history.
Mm-hmm.
On April 27th, 1865, a commercial steamboat called the Sultana, carrying over 2,000 passengers, though it was legally only allowed to carry 376.
Why? Why?
I know. It's like, and amazingly, that is not even, I think that contributed to the problem, but that was not even why this happened.
Oh my God.
So this steamboat, it burst into flames due to unresolved issues with the boilers. Between the people that died immediately as a result of the explosion, those that died later of burn damage, and those that died in their attempts to swim to shore, the total number of casualties is estimated to be somewhere between 1,200 and 1,800 people.
Oh my, that's like most of them.
It's most of them. Correct. This number here, right, between 1,200 and 1,800 feels like a rather large discrepancy, right? Like
Sure.
information that we could and should have been able to verify so that we could have more accurate numbers in relation to this horrific historical disaster. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like there was a census in 1865?
Something to note, because it massively plays into the limitations of our coverage of the Sultana disaster, is the fact that it occurred in April of 1865. Off the top of your head, Leah, do you recall what was happening in American history in April of 1865?
Was it a war?
It was the end of the Civil War.
Okay.
Yeah, correct. So it was the month that marked the end of the Civil War, which is the bloodiest war in American history. It was the month that marked the first presidential assassination in American history with Abraham Lincoln's death. And it was the month that marked the start of the Reconstruction Era. So, like, there was a lot going on.
Well, and honestly, if it's on the tail end of the Civil War, I don't know. I feel like there probably wasn't a great understanding of how many people were. I don't know.
No, exactly. I think that's exactly right. Because of this horrible conflict that was happening on American soil, unfortunately, the number of casualties on a day-to-day was changing. And also because of the Civil War and because of Lincoln's assassination and the Reconstruction Era and so on and so forth, much of the Sultana disaster was largely overshadowed.
Yeah, that's probably why I've never heard of it.
Right, exactly. It just got like morphed and meshed into the Civil War conflict. Much of the research even has been extensively neglected. But this is a really important story to tell. When you think of the Titanic, a topic that we have covered before, the Titanic is, of course, so much more popular than the Sultana, and yet the number of casualties is roughly the same.
Oh my gosh. I see. I don't
Yeah.
remember numbers very well like that. So that's crazy.
Yeah. Because of the way this story was so quickly overshadowed by more pressing matters in the political and societal sphere, there isn't much information about it. But we will, of course, share what we can in this episode. This may be one of our shorter episodes. So consider this horrific explosion in which thousands of people lost their lives as a palate cleanser
Sure.
from some of our longer episodes.
Sure.
Okay, I didn't really mean that. But I do like the idea of something cleansing my palate. You see, I just needed a
there you
segue
go.
to our cocktail
That was
segment.
good.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I needed a segue. I didn't actually mean it. Let's cleanse our palates properly and appropriately with a drink.
Love it.
Ding, ding, ding.
I'm Rachel,
And I'm Leah.
and this is Hashtag History,
the podcast for both history nerds and history haters alike.
where we dive into history's greatest stories of controversy, conspiracy, and corruption.
All right, this week we would like to start off the cocktail segment by not thanking Sam, the sponsor of this week's cocktail and every other cocktail this season, but instead by roasting her. No, I'm kidding. Unless that's something you're into as her sister.
I was just going to say, as her sister, that is in fact one of my professional responsibilities.
No, I'm going to say thank you, Sam.
Yeah, I can't roast her today because she actually just this morning, she and her best friend, they make coffee syrups all the time, and she
Mhm.
just made like a personal special delivery of some mocha coffee syrup to us this morning.
How do
So
I get on the delivery list for that?
I know, right? So
Mhm.
anyway, I will refrain from roasting her today
Okay.
because she did bring me syrup.
Okay.
And I guess she did sponsor this whole entire season of the
Yeah,
podcast.
I guess, whatever.
So I'll just roast her tomorrow instead.
Yeah. So instead, I guess we'll just say thanks, Sam.
Yeah, thank you, Samantha.
Okay. This week's cocktail is the Mississippi Punch.
That sounds awesome.
After making the drink, I was like, this feels less like a punch and more just kind of like a whiskey sour. I don't know, like
Yeah.
a spin on a whiskey sour,
Yeah.
which I'm into.
Mm-hmm.
So it contains bourbon, cognac, that's what's different,
Mm-hmm.
lemon juice, cane or simple syrup, and then water or lemonade. I didn't have lemonade, so I did just do
Oh,
water,
I did lemonade.
but I think it would be really good with lemonade. Yeah,
If you give me the option in the cocktail ingredients that Leah put together, if the option is water or lemonade, I was like, okay,
obviously.
so lemonade.
Yes.
My eyes don't even see water.
I know, I know. So you just shake all the ingredients together in a shaker with ice, and then you pour it over a pre-chilled glass. My glass was not pre-chilled.
Yeah,
Um,
same. Mine just has ice cubes in it.
I also saw a commenter do lemonade instead of water. As I mentioned,
Hmm.
that is an option. And I mean, we can maybe compare,
Yeah.
contrast since I have
Yeah, yeah,
water, you have lemonade. Okay. And then, according to an article on gardenandgun.com, Mississippi Punch has a history as long and winding as its namesake river. First printed in the 1862 cocktail
yeah.
guide,
Oh.
How to Mix Drinks, or the Bon Vivant's Companion by Jerry Thomas, it stayed alive by evolving. Cocktail authority David Wondrich has called the drink Mississippi history in a glass.
Oh.
Yeah, it contains French cognac, American bourbon, Jamaican and or British rum, Spanish lemons, and sugar. So that was like the original recipe.
Cool.
And then in Imbibe, which is a book that that same guy created,
Hmm.
Wondrich, he admits it's not known if the original recipe might have traveled downstream from St. Louis or upriver from New Orleans, but by the 1850s, individual cocktails were beginning to supplant big batch punches, and the ingredients migrated into large bar glasses and were shaken with
Mm.
ice. With its reliance on dark liquors, this is a punch for people who want to taste the alcohol in their drink, and I have a feeling it's going to be pretty strong.
I love that because anytime there is a drink like this, right, that has lemon juice and simple syrup and water, you assume it's kind of be more like a refreshing,
Yeah.
watered down drink. So I'm really excited.
Yeah. And I was very, even though it came from gardenandgun.com,
Mhm.
um, I, I loved that little bit of history. It's really hard to find cocktails that actually have some history behind it. So,
Totally. And I actually think the time frame is really great too. We are talking
right?
about an event that happened in 1865, and this cocktail maybe dates back to even before 1862.
Yeah.
That is so cool. I do have one very quick side story about cognac. When I went to buy it this morning at Rayleigh's,
Hmm.
so I pick up, like, I found it, I pick it up off the shelf, and I was like, oh, like it was pretty
Okay.
light in weight, right? So I
Yeah.
look at it, half the bottle is missing and the seal was broken.
Oh, someone drank
So
it.
someone, yeah.
Just
So
chugged some
I
cognac in the
yeah.
store.
So I grabbed obviously the bottle next to it and purchased that, but I told the cashier, like, FYI, there's like a half empty bottle of cognac on the shelf. I don't know if you noticed. And she was super funny. She was like, yo, that's bad. Thanks for telling me. I'll make sure I let my manager know. We'll go check it out. And then it's like halfway through ringing up my stuff. She's like, so are you thirsty? Would you like to go get a drink from the shelf? And I was like, actually, that sounds kind of nice. Sure.
Oh, yeah, we should actually try it.
Let's try it.
Okay.
Since we talked for so long pre-recording, all of my cubes are melted, but that's fine.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, cheers.
Cheers.
All I taste is the whiskey. Oh, well, no, there's a little aftertaste of cognac in there.
I feel like mine is blended perfectly.
Mm.
Where like maybe it's the melted ice cubes, where the liquor isn't coming through strong, but neither is the lemonade and the simple syrup. Like it's blended very well.
Yeah. My liquor is strong, but not like off-putting,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
I like bourbon, and I use Bullet, which is a pretty good bourbon, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, no, it's really good.
I really like it.
Hmm.
What is your rating?
Oh my God, I just almost inhaled a little bit. Um, I mean, bourbon, lemon,
Yeah.
right up my
Yeah.
alley. 8.5.
And I was going to say 8. This is a beautiful season. Have you noticed? Our
Yeah,
cocktails have been high the whole season.
have they really?
We have not had one below like 7.5, I think.
Okay, watch the next one. No, actually, the next one sounds good too.
The next one sounds so good. Speaking of the next one, I don't know, spoiler alert for listeners. The next one's a mule. And anytime that Leah and I record together, I always make my husband a cocktail also.
Yeah.
And he knew that we were having a mule today, but he didn't know what order. So I just gave him this one and he tasted it. And I always ask him what his rating is. I don't take a drink until we record together.
Yeah.
And he's like, it's okay, but I wouldn't rank this as one of the highest mules that I've had. And I was like, well, that would be because it is not.
There's no ginger in there.
I know. I'm like, can't you tell if it has ginger beer in it or not? That made me laugh hella hard. Like, that would be because it is not a mule. Okay. Thank you. It's delicious.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right. So let's start with a bit of maritime history, the construction of steamboats, their boiler systems, and whatnot. I know. Calm down. I can see you're getting very excited.
I was just going to say, just what I've always wanted to talk about.
I can tell this is exactly how you wanted to spend a Saturday afternoon was talking about steamboat construction.
Oh, yeah.
Don't worry. I don't either. So we're going to go fast through this. By the 1860s, steamboats were used pretty extensively for transporting goods from place to place. This is, of course, before automobiles were invented. And it's also before the big boom of railway construction, which happened in the late 1860s. In fact, one could argue that the date of this particular disaster was narrowly on the cusp of the decline of steamboats. Following the Civil War, that is when railroads really flourished as the new, more efficient mode of transportation. And by 1890-ish, steamboat travel was largely no more.
Isn't that kind of, if I recall, when we also did the Hindenburg disaster episode, I feel like it was the same thing for that, where it was like
on the cusp.
Airboats were kind of on the decline.
Yeah. For the time period that we are discussing today, steamboats were indeed very popular. Despite this, steamboats were known to be particularly dangerous modes of transportation. In 1860 alone, so just 5 years before this disaster, nearly 500 people died on steamboats due to collisions and, most commonly, boiler explosions. The boiler systems constructed in these steamboats were just simply not safe, given the lack of technology that was available at the time. For example, things like pressure gauges were not a thing for a long period of time. So the high pressure in these boiler rooms could cause extreme temperatures, which would ultimately lead to explosions. It's kind of, I appreciate you bringing up the Hindenburg episode because it's kind of the same concept where it's like the very construction and design
Was faulty.
Was faulty and is just waiting for something bad to happen. But people needed modes of transportation. And I just can't imagine, like, I need to so badly get from one place to another that I'm willing to. I think every time you were getting on a steamboat, you had to be accepting of the possibility that you might not make it to your destination.
Kind of like getting on an airplane in 2025.
I had the thought
I'm sorry.
and did not vocalize it, but correct. In the Sultana in particular, which was first launched in January of 1863, it had 4 fire tube boilers. Fire tube boilers could generate a lot more steam per fuel load than your standard boiler.
Right. Yeah.
But
got it.
Got it. Okay. But I promise this is actually the end of this. But the thing with fire tube boilers, they had to keep a constant water level that had to be maintained in order to operate. So, of course, with more power comes more risks. These boilers were exceptionally prone to explosions. And with steamboats being primarily made of wood, a giant fire was oftentimes imminent. Now, the Sultana was en route to New Orleans when they learned that the 16th president to the United States, Abraham Lincoln, had been assassinated.
Wow. So it was like en route. Wow.
Yeah. That's when they learned. And of course, the way that news spread at this time, it's slow, right? We don't see it on, I was going to say Twitter,
oh, yeah.
but that is a bad word to me now. We don't say that word. We don't see it online, right?
Right.
And yeah, so Sultana is headed to New Orleans when they learn about the assassination. The captain in command of the Sultana, Captain James Cass Mason, headed to Mississippi with the goal of spreading the news about the president's assassination with the southern states because, again, word takes a while to spread. It was when he reached Mississippi that Captain Mason was hit with a proposal that he could not resist. A local captain named Reuben Hatch told Mason about the thousands of Union soldiers who had been held in Confederate prison camps throughout the southern states who had now been released, given that the Civil War had ended, and now required safe passage home. What's more, the captain shared with Mason that the government was willing to offer money to steamboat captains that were willing to do the transport. The US government would pay $2.75 per enlisted man and $8 per officer. That is quite a bit of money. I was not able to get an exact conversion of what that would be because calculating inflation over 160 years was a lot of math. But a rough equivalent would be about $60 per enlisted man and a little over $150 per officer in today's money. That's a lot. I don't know the exact numbers of how many enlisted men versus officers there were that Mason brought on board his steamboat, but we do know that he brought roughly 1,000 war prisoners on board. So even at the low end, if they are all enlisted members, not at officer rank, that's roughly $60,000 in 1865. And that's on the low end. Now, it wasn't totally uncommon for steamboats to transfer Civil War troops. In fact, in addition to carrying cargo and a small amount of passengers, this was precisely what they were regularly used for during the Civil War era. But adding 1,000 people to a boat that could only safely accommodate 367 people, that was uncommon, and that was dangerous. Perhaps even more dangerous is the fact that Captain Mason was well aware of a boiler issue the Sultana was experiencing at this exact moment. Just days before Mason loaded up the 1,000 war prisoners onto his boat, a boiler had sprung a leak. Mason had a mechanic quickly patch it up, not wanting to miss out on the opportunity to make some money by transporting the Union soldiers.
Like, I get it, but come on.
Yeah, I mean, how many times have we talked about this on our podcast? Is like the equation that these people go through in their minds, the value of money over human lives.
Well, and I have to like always try to assume the best in people.
Yeah.
In that, like, he probably wasn't like, oh, this will kill. You know what
No,
never,
yeah, I
like,
definitely
assume.
don't think.
Whereas like for the Ford Pinto or whatever, like that was very much like they did the calculation.
Yes.
But this is very much like you don't think that, oh, this little mishap or this little thing is going to kill 2,000 people.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But
don't know.
I think, like, I'm trying to put myself in those shoes. And I do think you're not thinking this is going to kill all these people.
Yeah.
But you are probably thinking, like, we might not get there.
Yeah.
No, not we might, but like we might get stranded in the middle of the ocean and someone has to come rescue us. There is a possibility that something
Yeah.
could go wrong.
Yeah.
But certainly, I totally agree with you. Mason is not assuming that they're all going to lose their lives, right?
Yeah. I feel this drink so hard.
You're drunk.
I'm drunk right now.
That's
Ooh.
exciting. This
Oh my
episode is
God.
going to get long. I think I actually genuinely think that my ice cubes, like, I don't taste the liquor very much in this.
Wow.
Like, I think it really diluted it.
Like I'm actually like
Woozy.
not woozy, but like spinning a little bit. My God.
I can tell you feel your drink.
Why? Because my cheeks are all rosy.
No, it's mostly this. It's like it's kind of this that's doing it for me. Now, do you understand how steamboats work? Has your drunken
Yes.
mind like, oh,
You know that meme where it like shows
yes.
the math equations?
Sometimes you're your smartest when you're drunk.
I understand it now. So
Yeah, perfect. Had the mechanic fixed the boiler properly, as he wanted to do by completely replacing the boiler, it would have taken a few days and more tools and resources, all of which would have likely led to another eager steamboat captain taking those passengers on their boat instead. And Mason was not having any of that. So instead of replacing the boiler entirely, the mechanic did as Mason asked and simply patched it up.
we'll fix it later.
Yeah, we'll fix it later. That it'll be fine. Not only was this steamboat operating with a faulty boiler, and keep in mind, the boiler system at this time was dangerous enough, even under the most ideal of circumstances. But as you will recall, the boat was excessively overcrowded. Like I mentioned earlier, the legal capacity for this boat was 367 people. But after all of the war prisoners made it on board, in addition to crew members and paying passengers, the grant. I guess maybe I am feeling the drink because I feel like I'm flubbing at my words more than usual. The grand total of people on board the Sultana exceeded 2,000. The weight of this many people on board was so bad that the deck actually started to sag and wooden beams had to be laid down to better support it. The deck was literally sagging. The deck was sagging. That's crazy.
I feel like as soon as you see that, you would say, that's enough people. Maybe that's enough. Maybe let's cap it double the legal limit instead of triple.
Every time the ship passed by a port or town or whatever, everyone on board would crowd to one side of the ship so that they could like holler and wave at the people. The weight shift not only threatened to capsize the boat, it also meant that the water levels and pressure were constantly being sloshed around, something that was very, very bad given the fact that there was a faulty boiler on board.
What were these soldiers like children?
There are some kids, but I think also some of these soldiers had been kept in a prison camp for years.
Okay, because I was just gonna say like running from side to side.
I
Like,
think they
come
were so
on.
excited to be
Yeah.
out and so excited to be one step closer to their families.
Also, there was no internet, so like, what else are you gonna do?
That's my favorite catchphrase of this entire 6-year journey of this podcast. It's just there was no internet, guys. Okay, there was no TV. What else were
Seriously,
they going to
like,
do?
what else do you do?
What else do you do? So we actually amazingly
Wow.
have an image of the overcrowded Sultana. This is a picture that was taken by a photographer when the boat temporarily docked in Arkansas. So let's check it out. I love that we have a picture of this, and I think that that goes to the fact that it was like shocking
Yeah.
to see how overcrowded this boat was. That someone was like,
Oh, I gotta take a
"Oh,
picture
let
of
me get my
that."
camera." Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot. It's a very like old photo. It's kind of hard to see, but I mean, you can see it's a steamboat and every single inch of space is covered by black spots
Yeah.
that are human beings.
Oh, yeah. All of those spots are human beings. Isn't that insane?
Yeah. And they're like standing on top of places that clearly are not supposed to be standing on top of.
To your point, children.
I mean, no, that's a full grown adult there.
To your point, they're acting like children.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
This picture here was taken just one day before all would come crumbling down.
Wait, hold on. There was multiple days. I wasn't even paying
Oh,
attention to
yes.
the
Yes,
dates.
yes, yes.
So they were this crowded for multiple days. It's not like a couple hours.
No, they slept. I'm not joking. They slept on top of each other. Some slept standing up. Yes.
Why? Why? Money. Why?
Yeah, for the captain, money. For the passengers, just getting home after
Yeah.
this horrible war. Just
Yeah.
getting home.
Yeah.
As much as I would like to think of myself as like a cautious person, if I was given the option of you're offered the opportunity to go home, you will be crowded, you will be sleeping standing up on a potentially dangerous steamboat versus you have to wait another 2 weeks to hope that another steamboat's going to come through to bring you back to your family after you've been held in a prison camp for several years, I would probably take the former option.
Well, and I highly doubt that the passengers were told anything about it being potentially dangerous.
That too, especially, yeah, the paying passengers, the people that are not these Union soldiers, they're not expecting this situation.
Yeah.
At only 2 a.m. on April 27th, 1865, when the Sultana was just outside of Memphis, Tennessee, that patched up boiler exploded. It is estimated that some 400 people on board died immediately from that initial explosion. Not long after, 2 more boilers exploded. Between the explosion themselves, the steam, and the fire that started and spread along the wooden steamboat, the Sultana was torn apart. One of the first areas of the boat to be blown away was the pilot house, meaning that even if one could steer a sinking ship, there was no one on board to direct the boat anyway. Those that had survived the massive explosions clung to one another and even tore off pieces of wood from the boat that they used as flotation devices in the freezing water. Not long after the explosion, another steamboat called the Bostona happened to be coming downriver and witnessed the horrific sight. Members on board the Bostona grabbed things on board their ship, like doors and planks and chairs, and threw them out to the surviving Sultana members to use as flotation devices until they could pull them safely on board. They were able to rescue about 150 people before the Bostona headed straight for Memphis, where they would call for more help. Because they only brought, a limited number of people on board their boat.
They were following probably the law.
Or even not only following the law, like maybe they exceeded it.
Sure.
But not to an insane degree.
Yeah. Maybe like 5% exceeded it, instead of like 300%.
Precisely. Here, several people jumped in to assist, whether they had a full-on steamboat or just a small fishing boat themselves. As many people as possible were rescued before around 7 a.m. that same fateful day, the Sultana officially sunk into the Mississippi River. Now, something I learned while researching for this episode that I think is really important to hear, given today's political climate, is the fact that many of those saving the once imprisoned Union soldiers were actually Confederates. Think about where this disaster occurred, just 7 miles outside of Memphis, Tennessee, a Confederate state. It is, of course, worth noting that because of Tennessee's geography, it actually was kind of in the middle of the northern and southern states, and several people from Tennessee were Union loyalists. Tennessee was the last state to join the Confederacy. So likely not everyone assisting these Union soldiers were loyal Confederates, but we do know that many were. And I think this is a cool moment where we can reflect on humanity and put differences to the side when it comes to human lives.
It reminds me of, and obviously this isn't the same thing, like as far as like political differences, but it reminds me of like when the airplane crashed on the Hudson, the Sully, Captain Sully landed on the Hudson, and like just random boats were coming to pick him up, or like 9/11. Every single boat on the harbor was just going to get people and help them get out of Manhattan,
It goes to that Mr. Rogers quote that says something like, look for the helpers. Do you know the quote that I'm talking about? That there always are people, and as bitter and frustrated as I am in our current climate, obviously, if I saw someone in distress, I would not first ask them who they voted for in the 2024 election. And I mean, it comes down to human nature. We could and should all care for each other as human beings.
Right.
To be fair, though, if I did see a certain bumper sticker on said car, I shouldn't say that recorded for people to hear me say. Okay, this will be used later in my trial. All right. Of the more than 2,000 people on board, it is estimated that less than 1,000 survived. The number of casualties is so all over the place that I actually wanted to read this little section verbatim that I found on Wikipedia to give you an idea of just how inconsistent the casualty numbers are. Okay, are you ready for this?
Yes.
Do not take notes because you'll be crossing stuff out and rewriting and okay? Quote, less than a month after the disaster, the Commissary General of Prisoners, who investigated the disaster, reported an overall loss of soldiers, passengers, and crew of 1,238. In February 1867, the Bureau of Military Justice placed the death toll at 1,100.
Okay, not too far off.
We're not going too crazy. In 1880, the United States Congress, in conjunction with the War Department, reported the loss of life at 1,259.
Okay, we're back up again.
The official count by the United States Customs Service was 1,547. In 1880, the War Department placed the number of survivors at 931, but the most recent research places that number at just 263. Unquote. Okay. So that's why the episode started with there was a loss of lives within a range of 600 because it's so all over the place.
Yeah.
If you weren't crushed or burned by the explosion and flames, the likelihood of surviving in the cold water and not succumbing to hypothermia were not great. Of the children on board, none of them survived. Of the women on board, only a small handful lived. For many, including Captain Mason, their lives were lost in a horrifically tragic, untimely, and entirely preventable way. Imagine for many of these people's families, the war is finally over. Your loved one that has been a prisoner in a Confederate war camp has finally been freed. They are making their way back to you after living, surviving through the bloodiest conflict in American history, just to die because of a boiler explosion on board the ship that was supposed to bring them back home. That's really brutal. For months after the disaster, bodies floated ashore. There were so many bodies recovered that the local towns ran out of coffins, resorting to covering the bodies with mere blankets and just leaving them there. Some of the bodies were buried in cemeteries. Many were never recovered. The Sultana disaster marked the worst maritime disaster in American history, with the loss of more than 1,000 Union soldiers in one ordeal alone, surpassing, quote, the number of Union deaths on most Civil War battlefields.
That's crazy.
Unquote. An investigation was conducted to determine what the root cause of the disaster was and who was at fault. But it was honestly a pretty lame and half-assed investigation, to put it bluntly. Captain Mason was blamed for much of the disaster, but of course he was no longer around to accept responsibility. They did try to place some blame on Reuben Hatch, the captain that had first proposed to Mason that he placed so many Union soldiers on his boat. But Hatch ignored multiple subpoenas and could not be found when the U.S. Marshal went to arrest him. So there's that. There were bigger issues at stake at the time, with the end of the Civil War, the assassination of Lincoln, the Johnson presidency, and the Reconstruction Era. But that doesn't mean the Sultana disaster has been received with a giant blind eye. As recently as 2015, another investigation was conducted into the disaster to determine exactly how the boiler explosion had occurred. This investigation found that the very nature of the way these boilers were constructed and used on steamboats at this time was prone for disaster, regardless of whether there had been a faulty boiler on board or even the excessive weight of the overloaded capacity to contend with. In fact, not long after the Sultana explosion, two other steamboats with the same boiler infrastructure also exploded.
Oh my gosh.
There have been several monuments and markers erected in honor of the Sultana disaster. And in 2015, a temporary Sultana disaster museum was opened in Marion, Arkansas. Very recently, the museum actually acquired a local school gymnasium that they are going to convert into a permanent location for the Sultana Disaster Museum. It's actually supposed to open late this year in 2025. It has been a long effort, but really exciting. And so definitely head to the website at sultanadisastermuseum.com if you would like to donate to the museum, or even just to check out additional information about this disaster, because they've compiled some really amazing information there. One other legacy from this disaster that I loved was that beginning 20 years after the explosion, living survivors began meeting for annual reunions.
I love that.
Yeah, me too. They officially formed the National Sultana Survivors Association. They did this for several years until in 1941, the last survivor, Private Charles M. Eldridge, passed away at the age of 96 in September of 1941.
Wow.
Yeah. Thoughts, opinions?
Just that, number one, I'm drunk. Number two, no, it's just really sad that stuff that is preventable. And I say that with like a grain of salt, because preventable, it is what was used at the time, right? Steamboats, steam engines were commonplace and kind of the new technology of the time. It's just unfortunate, though, that because of that, people were willing to put other folks' lives at risk, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think maybe what the biggest tragedy here is the idea of getting word that your loved one who has been held in a war camp for years is finally coming home. Like the fact that they survived the bloodiest war in American
know,
history.
yeah.
And then this happened. They died because of a boiler explosion on a boat that was bringing them back home. That's just devastating.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much for listening to this episode of #History.
We will share the picture that we discussed on the episode to our Instagram, and all sources used to put together this episode can be found on our website at #history-pod.com.
A special thank you to my husband, Alex, who cannot tell the difference between a mule and not a mule, for for editing the podcast. You are the best, and I love
You're
you.
The best, yeah.
You're the best. Thank you. Even though your taste buds,
Not the
your
best.
editing skills, beautiful. Subscribe to us on whatever podcast platform you use. Share about us with your family and friends, and then give us a rate and review.
And be sure to check us out on Instagram. We are at #history_podcast.
And come check us out over on Patreon, where for as little as $1 a month, you can help support our books and booze supply. This is a place where you can support the podcast, and in exchange for your support, you will receive an automatic 15% off all merchandise, and we mail you cards and stickers. This is probably not relevant because this episode is coming out many, many weeks from now.
3 months from now.
3 to 6 years from now. And it is the first week of March when we are recording this. But I did want to share that I just mailed out a bunch of Women's History Month stickers to our patrons. So there are, times throughout the year that we do fun things like that. Just to thank you so much for supporting the podcast and all the work that we do here.
Love it.
Love it. That's it. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.